Yes, a hysterectomy, because men can have hysterectomies too. Hey folks, it's Finn. Welcome back everybody, lovely to see you, and a very big welcome to anyone who is new. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about having a hysterectomy. Yes, you heard that right, men can have hysterectomies too. So I've had a few different questions about my hysterectomy, which I'm going to answer in this video, and those were, have I had a hysterectomy? If so, why did I choose to have one? How was the procedure, and how is it reflecting on having had it? Before we get stuck in, a quick reminder to anyone new that my name is Finn and I make videos about gender transition, mental health and LGBT lifestyle. If you like what you see and you haven't already subscribed, I'd love it if you would do so, and don't forget to tick the little bell, then you'll be notified whenever I upload anything new. Let's get stuck in. So firstly, yes, I have had a hysterectomy, which does sound strange coming out of this face. I had a hysterectomy as part of my gender transition journey, which I'm now at the end of. This transgender cake is cooked. Now, I chose to have a hysterectomy for a couple of reasons, which I'll get to in a moment. But I first want to address some of the kind of myths around having a hysterectomy. I believed in early days of transition, from what I heard and what I read, that if I didn't have a hysterectomy, I would be at an increased risk of certain types of cancer. And although there is a little bit of research that suggests that trans men might be susceptible to things like polycystic ovary syndrome since being on testosterone, the jury is out really on whether testosterone itself does cause more cancers if you haven't had a hysterectomy. What tends to be the biggest issue really is that as trans men, understandably, we don't want to have smears. So if we don't have a hysterectomy, we need to keep having those smears. And if we don't, then any cancer, early signs of cancer, can be missed and therefore increase our likelihood of cancer. Did that make sense? So before I get on to my reasons, what I would say is that if you are being told that you must have a hysterectomy and you're not sure you want one, do make sure to do your research properly first, because it is ultimately your choice. So do a good Google and read around. So I chose to have a hysterectomy for two main reasons. The biggest reason was that I have had lower surgery, phalloplasty, and of course having that meant I had to have the hysterectomy. That's hysterectomy, womb, ovaries, everything gone, because obviously once I had my penis created, leaving the womb and everything behind would then definitely increase my risk of cancer, because I wouldn't have been able to have any of that looked at and checked over to prevent cancer in the first place. So that was a no-brainer for me. Even if I hadn't have had lower surgery, I was going to have a hysterectomy. And the main reason for that is that once I was on testosterone, within about the first 2 or 3 months, I started to get horrendous pain, which felt like period pain, and it was terrifying. In my previous incarnation, I did get quite a lot of pain with my monthly periods, and a few months down the line on T, I started to get the very similar kind of crampy feelings, but 1,000,000 times worse. And one of the strangest things about these pains, which felt like period pains, was that they were often worse after I had sex and after I climaxed, which didn't help me to really have much of a sexual appetite. There were a couple of times in the first few months on transition where I was close to going to hospital with how bad the pain was. And I'm pretty good with pain. So for this reason, I was really keen to get all of that gone. But why did I have this pain? Well, this pain to me, I thought it was an early warning sign that my T levels weren't high enough and I was going to have a period. I never did. But when I spoke to my gender clinic about it, they said that it can often be that once you're on testosterone, obviously all your muscles increase. And so when you have any cramping in those old organs, you feel it twice, 3 times, 4 times as much, because there are stronger muscles to cramp. And also on testosterone, it does cause all of your female organs, I hate saying that word, atrophy, to kind of shrink up, shrivel and so forth. So you have the shrinking up of everything and the increasing of the muscles, and all of this combined can cause some trans men to have a lot of pain. And I was certainly one of them. I spoke to many other trans guys who had this as well. There are loads of trans guys that never have this and some of us that do. Again, there is not a huge amount of research as to exactly why. But either way, those pains made me want all of that inside stuff gone. So yes, from very early on testosterone, I pretty much decided get rid of that as soon as possible. But then I changed my mind about having lower surgery, so I waited to have it as part of lower surgery because here in the UK, our surgeons prefer to do that as part of the second stage procedure in phalloplasty, so that they can make sure that they take it out in a way that doesn't compromise you having your surgery. Make sense? So to recap, yes, I've had a hysterectomy, and I had one because my insides hurt once on testosterone, and as part of my phalloplasty surgery, that all needed to be gone. With me so far? So as I just mentioned, my hysterectomy was part of my second stage phalloplasty, and that was all done by keyhole, and it was a fairly quick procedure, but the most painful. Honestly, stage 1 phalloplasty went on for ages. I'll link you to a playlist about that, and honestly, the recovery for that is just mammoth. It's a good 3 months before I felt anything like human, but the pain was kind of niggly and constant. Whereas stage 2, where I had the hysterectomy, my word, that was intense. For the first 2 weeks after surgery, I could barely move or walk any distance whatsoever. But at about 10 days post-op, I turned a corner and felt fine. But you see, I had my hysterectomy at the same time as my vaginectomy, which I'll talk about in another video. And I think possibly those two combined was what made it so painful. But either way, it was over quick. Within a couple of weeks, I went back to feeling more like my usual self. As usual as I get. People have asked me about, was there a hormone difference afterwards? Did I feel different? And quite honestly, no. I actually expected to almost kind of sense that there was something gone, but I never had that sensation. I had my testosterone levels checked about 2 months after the procedure. They hadn't shifted one bit. I didn't have any change in mood, any of that, nothing. So for me, it was really straightforward, no repercussions whatsoever. So am I happy I had it? Absolutely I am, and the most reason I'm happy to have all of that gone is because of that pain. Because even though I knew it wasn't period pain, it felt like it, and so that was causing huge dysphoria. So to be post-op after having a hysterectomy, have all of that pain gone, to know that I have no female organs left behind, is such a big relief and a huge dysphoria reliever too. Now the one question I always often get asked as well is about having children, and do I regret not being able to have children? And I think this is a topic that needs its own video, and I will do that, and as soon as I do I will link it here. But just to say quickly, I am 46 now. I started my transition at 37. I started my transition after a lifetime of self-abuse, drinking, taking drugs, self-harm, under-eating, and for that reason, my age and my health history, I chose not to freeze my eggs. I kind of knew that I was at the top end of it not being very successful anyway. If I'd have been younger, I would have frozen my eggs, because of course I'd love to have children. But for me, at the age I was, I just wanted to transition. I didn't want to pause long enough to have to freeze my eggs. I knew that freezing my eggs likely wouldn't be successful anyway. So it was something I had to come to terms with. But to be honest, I've been coming to terms with that all my life, even before I was trans. But I will, at some point, do an entire video about that, because there is much more to be said for sure. But for me personally, storing my eggs wasn't an option. I just needed to transition, and I constantly go through little phases where I do grieve a bit. Not to say I can't do some fostering later on in life, it's a possibility, but if you're younger, I would understand if you wanted to pause long enough just to freeze your eggs before you go forward for hysterectomy. So it's something that you should, of course, take your time deciding. But for me, I knew that it just wasn't an option. And I just look after sheep instead. I hope that was helpful. If you do have any further questions you'd like me to answer, please do feel free to leave them in the section below. And if you'd like to see more videos on the gender transition process, I shall link you to a playlist here. Thanks for watching, folks. Keep on keeping on. See you next week.